Sometimes when you're meant to be doing something, things unravel and more opportunities come to you.
It's really a human thing to be creative.
Yeah.
So I always find it so funny when people are of the mindset that they aren't creative.
And if we do that, we're always going to fall short or criticize or discourage ourselves when we're comparing it to a professional or what we think is a standard.
Dinesh, we were talking before we hit record about how, sometimes you're moving along in life and you wind up like having resistance or stickiness to moving forward, right? For whatever reason, you just decide to start over. And I feel like that happens a lot. Does that ever happen to you?
Yeah, all the time. I think anytime I try something new, I second guess and I'm like, is it worth it?
For even when this podcast, you floated the idea of doing it and the immediate answer was yes. And then it was like, I don't know, should we not? But I think
Really? I didn't know this. You second guessed my proposal for the podcast and you waited 2 years to tell me?
I did, because it was not the podcast. It was
It was me.
No, it was definitely you for sure. No, it's just that the identity, right? Of like, well, I already am doing this one thing. Do I want to add on another thing? It feels like starting over, which can be really uncomfortable and scary. There's the cringe factor. What are people going to think? These are all things that my friend Jen calls head trash that kind of comes up for people when they look at starting over or experiencing a transition in life, right?
Yeah, absolutely agree. But I'm still shocked. I'll have to process that you had head trash when we talked about starting the podcast, which, by the way, has won 2 awards and has helped lots of people and has crossed 100 and almost something episodes.
Yeah. And so I'm so glad that I told my head trash to just clean itself up. Yeah. Here we are. But that's what I really loved about today's guest, who is the epitome of that strength, resilience, courage to do something and then shift, and do something and then shift again. I also love that, as you know, all of our guests they're all special to us in one way or another. Today, our guest has come to us through a mutual connection. So that makes it all the more special. Karriena Daryanani, welcome to Happy and Human.
Thank you for having me. I am so excited to be here and chat about my journey.
You can talk about your head trash too, but
we'll get to that.
And I think we all have head trash, right?
We do.
It depends. It shows up in different ways. It shows up at different times, but we all have it. And I'm excited that Karriena's here because she is a fellow Sindhi. How about that, huh?
Yeah,
and at some point in the conversation, maybe we'll start talking Sindhi. Who knows?
Yeah.
My grandmother.
She would be proud. I hope you share this with your grandmother, even if you do not wind up speaking in Sindhi.
Definitely.
But yeah. So Karriena, okay, I'm going to give listeners the Google bio that they can look up real quick. They can look up the full thing on their own, but just a couple of things. You're an abstract media artist. You're from Hong Kong. Now you're in Cali. And you have a degree in fashion design, a degree in education, a master's degree in educational technology. And you've kind of been in this creative fashion industry box, if you will, but then you transitioned to jewelry, and then you wound up in this intersection of your love for art and education. Yeah?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, the road to becoming a full-time artist was not easy, and but it was still worth it, like every step of the way. And I just feel that it took a lot of trial and error and changing and moving in different directions to really get to where you feel you want to be. And I feel that finding what you're really passionate about and being able to continuously practice and do it has led me to such a fulfilling life. And on a daily basis, I just feel happy and content and fulfilled with what I'm doing.
It is absolutely stunning. What is the website? Why don't you tell everyone the website just up front so that if anyone's listening to this on a computer, they want to pull it up and listen to listen.
Yeah, that's a great idea. So my website is karrienaart.com. So that's KARRIENA and art, ART.com. And you will see my full collections and some things in a blog and some courses that are going to be coming up in the future.
I love it.
That's
What's your
amazing.
favorite piece right now?
So my favorite piece right now is actually the one behind me. It
Mm.
is titled The Space Between Us.
Yeah.
And this piece is all about how some people are distant, yet we feel forever connected. So you have
Mm,
this internal connection with some people, and that energy and bond that you feel with some people is just so strong that it feels forever.
wow.
Yeah, it's funny how we all have, well, not all, maybe, I don't want to generalize, but many of us have that one friend, right? Or that one family member where maybe we don't talk all the time, but when you do, it's like you pick up right where you left off and you're
Yeah.
never far away from one another's thoughts.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and when I create my work, it's a lot of it is to do with moments in our life, and I'll get to the story of how I came to that later. But it's also exploring human connection, how we feel connected to other people, how we feel connected to the present moment, and how we feel connected to just embracing certain moments in our life.
Mm, that's really pretty. Yeah. So if you're looking for a great piece of art for your office, or maybe you're building a house and you need some meaningful art, Karriena's the place to find it for sure.
Yes.
Absolutely. And you're incredibly, listeners, you have to check out her art, even if you're not interested in art. It is incredible how talented Karina is. I'm looking at some of her art and I want to buy some of it. I really like intertwining emotions.
Oh
Mm,
yeah, that is one of my favorite pieces. That piece is playing with different techniques, but the whole idea is that we step in and out of so many different emotions, yet they all work so harmoniously together. So
Yeah.
we move through life dealing with all these emotions that come and interplay with each other, yet we feel we can move forward and we are finding ways to harmonize ourselves to be able to keep moving forward in life. And I really love that piece because it's also a very playful piece in the way it's
mm.
constructed.
Yeah. So good. So good.
Yeah.
But tell us, there's a bio up here about Karina. Tell us about something about you that our listeners would only learn if they listen to the podcast. Wouldn't be able to find it anywhere else.
So I feel like I've had a very long journey into really becoming an artist. So I was born and
Mm.
raised in Hong Kong, and growing up there was amazing. It was such a great lifestyle. And from there, I went to college in New York, which was a culture shock, but it was an incredible experience. I went to Parsons School of Design and studied 4 years in fashion design. And that whole world of fashion and studying in a school like that just really challenges you to be the most creative you can be and to come up with high quality projects in such a short period of time. So you're constantly churning out work and you're constantly building out your creativity and your creative mindset. And that really shaped me in what I bring now to my art. Um, but from there, it took me a journey of going back to Hong Kong. My first job was with a British jewelry designer, and it it took me about 6 months before I was like, okay, I'm done with this. And then I moved back into fashion, and I realized after having a job in fashion that I didn't really love the fashion industry as much. So I then decided to work with my mom in jewelry design. And with her, I spent 4 years building a new collection with her. She was in jewelry for 21 years doing diamond jewelry. But when I started working with her, she launched a new collection of semi-precious jewelry.
Wow.
So it was really cool to be a part of that experience where we launched a new product. I got to do marketing for her, learn the whole business side of things. We got to do trade shows all over Asia. We went to like Bangkok, Malaysia, Dubai. selling jewelry everywhere, building our emailing list, and just, you learn so much when you just get thrown into a new business and like you're trying to build it from the ground up. But that was a really incredible experience because I got to spend a lot of time with my mom. We really bonded over those 4 years. I really understood the jewelry industry. I really understood how to even grow a business and be able to do trade shows like that, which now I'm doing. But it's it's so wild to me that all of my learnings that I learned from each job have just come into play in how I run my business now and with what I'm doing. Even though at the time I had no idea I wanted to become an artist, I didn't
Mhm.
even think of it as a career because I don't think anyone thinks of becoming an artist as a career. Most people just kind of fall into it and then people start asking you about work and then you kind of grow a career from there. And it's like, that's
Right.
pretty cool. Yeah, but and then as I was working with my mom, I also felt this lack of passion almost. Like I was working for her, but it wasn't mine. So I wanted to explore something that was just made me feel maybe alongside working with her at the time. So I applied to become a Zumba teacher instructor.
Wow.
And I was like, I need something that I'm passionate about. And I applied to become a Zumba instructor. I was teaching that on and off for a good year. And at the end of 2017, I started producing my first art pieces and I gave them as Christmas gifts. And from there, I uploaded to Instagram a couple of pieces, and a friend who was working at a co-working space in Hong Kong, she reached out and she was like, "Hey, we have a gallery. Why don't you create a collection and, put your stuff up?" And it was like the scariest thing because I did not really see it going anywhere. I just put up some pieces for fun. But I knew I wanted to do more. So I then created my first full collection in 2018. And as I was creating this collection, I also decided that I wanted to become an art educator because firstly, I was like, how am I gonna make money doing art? And secondly, I was like, I loved art so much that I wanted to learn more and be able to share that even more.
Mm.
So I applied for my teaching degree, and from there I launched my first collection, sold out, got commissions, and I got my teaching degree. So I was also doing internships at schools and just learning how to teach. 2019 was my favorite year. It was the best year. But I landed my first teaching job in Hong Kong. Um, I was dating my now husband at the time, so we were in a really good place. And and then I also was doing really well with my art. Like it was just growing really nicely. I was doing a lot of commission work and it just made me really happy. So at the end of 2019, I then um, my husband now proposed to me at the end of 2019, and I moved over to the States. And when I came over here, I was also, I decided to do a master's at that point in educational technology.
Wow.
And then when I moved over here, I was continuing to do my master's, but I also came here not knowing anybody. And I had just started my job as a teacher, and I had just started working as an artist and
Mhm.
starting to build something. And then I came over here and I was like, what do I do? And I actually didn't do anything for the first 6 to 8 months. And then I was just itching to get some canvases and paints. And I was like, I'm just gonna paint for fun and, see what happens from there. So I went to the art store, picked up some canvases, started painting again. And I, the first few pieces were just a disaster. Um, they were like, okay, like I would not sell this. But then I started painting more and more, and as I was painting, I realized that a lot of what I was thinking about while I was painting was all this stuff that had just happened where I went from, job after job, but then I was working and then I moved here, got married at some point, and then like there was just so much that happened. So as I was creating that collection, I called it Moments because I was really reflecting on everything that happened.
Hmm.
And what was really interesting to me is that if I hadn't stopped to really process and experience being so mindful and aware of the transitions, you kind of just feel like life just keeps moving by. And there's no way to feel like, oh, like I really enjoyed that, or
Mhm.
I really immersed myself in that experience. And,
Like,
I really like wanted to, I don't know, relive that moment again.
Mhm.
But we tend to just keep moving and moving forward. And with that collection, I was like, wow, like I feel like I relived my last like year or two, which was amazing. And time just really slowed down for me, and I really got to feel it, relive it.
Mhm.
Um, Anyways, and then from there, I kept creating. And as my collections grew, I picked more intentionally different moments. So I had a whole collection based on nature and just my experiences with nature, my experiences with people and connection, and yeah, and I just think it's just so valuable and important almost for us to really stop, think, process, and have a minute to stand still before we keep moving forward. Otherwise, you'll end up by 40, 50 years old and you're like, well, what happened?
talking about me. Kidding.
Yeah.
I have a follow-up because the story is amazing. I mean, it all flows. It made sense. And you're such a good storyteller. I could sort of visualize you sort of moving through from Hong Kong. I could see you painting and giving out the first pieces as presents and all that. So you're a fantastic storyteller. But I want to go back to, I don't know how far, but I want to go back to when you were sort of painting the pieces and giving them out as presents or things like that. Maybe 1 or 2 years before that, what was your plan? Did you have a plan for your life? What was your plan?
So 1 or 2 years before I started creating, I had I sort of had a plan. So when I went to fashion school, everyone that graduates from fashion school wants to become a fashion designer.
Yeah.
So my plan was to go back, get some experience, open my own fashion company. I was still trying to figure out what I wanted to do, all
Yeah.
within the creative field. But each creative field is also so different in its own way. Like the fashion industry is just a whole other ball game.
Yeah.
And I I was working with my mom in the family business, and I was like, I don't know if I want to open my own thing as
Yeah.
well. So my plan was to stay in jewelry and maybe teach some on the side.
Yeah.
Um, but I just really think that if I didn't pursue art, I would have been stuck in something that maybe wasn't as fulfilling or as something I was as passionate about.
Yeah.
You said so much that I actually wanted to stop and sort of slow down and stay in some of these moments, but I didn't want to keep interrupting you. But to that, you talked about, you know, the idea of having this plan and then moving, you're having success, right? You sold this collection, but then you came to the States and then you felt like that first run out after you moved was, you said, a disaster, right? But then you
Yeah.
kind of moved through it, and so I'm just curious, the question that came to mind is, how much of that, I'll call it the disaster run, how much of that was really reflective of kind of the amount of stuff that you yourself had not processed yet, and that's what came out?
Oh, that's interesting. It's funny, when you create from a place where you feel very calm and you have to not be stressed when you create because then nothing comes out. And I think the same thing applies in life, right? Like when you're very stressed, it's very hard to move forward or to think of new ideas because you're just in a different in this very blocked state of mind. But when you're creating, I think I was just very stressed on creating good pieces or stressed on like because I was already in a flow in Hong Kong and then I moved over here with like nothing. Like I was like, where do I begin? I don't know. Like what do I do? And there was just like a lot of pressure for myself that I put on myself to just create like really good pieces. But I I think when I let go of that pressure and you kind of let things flow and you really play around and you really explore and you tap into this mindset where you're exploring new ideas and color and different ways of doing things and you're constantly layering and trying to figure out like where this piece is going to go. It's almost like when you let go of everything and your specific ideas, things unfold in a better way.
So, can you walk us through what that was like? Because I think we all do it, right? We have a specific thing, a goal that we want to get to, and we think there's a certain way to do it, there's a certain time to do it, you need certain resources to do it. Um, and then there's usually a falling away of that in the evolution of the next. What did that actually look like for you?
I think it's like when anyone is in like a very fixed mindset, I think what I did was step away from it and maybe tried something new. And I think when you do something completely different, like I think I started off with a painting of I don't know what I did. I did like little hearts or I did a whole background of hearts and I was playing around with that. But it's totally not what I do now. But when I went from like, okay, this is not working, let me try something completely new and let me just literally throw paint onto a canvas and play around with a color scheme that is totally what I wouldn't do. That's
Mhm.
when things actually started to get into where they needed to be. And
Mhm.
that's when the painting actually started to flourish. So I think it also applies to like our mindset in our life. Like when you're constantly doing something and you're just moving in one direction, if you don't stop to think about like what are the other options, then like maybe you just keep going down a path that is not the best.
What would you say to someone who says, not all of us have the luxury to step away or to try something else, right? Let's say someone's working and they lose their job, for example, and they've got to get an income. And so the one thing that they know the fastest way to get an income is another job in that same area, right? Or they feel that they don't have the ability to look left or look right, and they say, well, you know what? I don't have that luxury right now. I have small kids. I've got this. I've got that. I've got this. What would you say to someone? Because I think what you're saying, my belief is that it's 100% accurate, right? And I think that all areas of your life becomes elevated when you start looking at things from a new perspective, right? When
Mhm.
the way we look at things change, the things we look at change, right?
Yeah.
And so, what would you say to someone who's maybe going through a period of transition, but is afraid to look around or try something new or explore a creative hobby, like let's say interior decorating or design or something like
Mm,
that? But there
mm,
are some real pressures in life. I've got to put food on the table. I've got kids that need my time.
100%.
I don't have time to experiment.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's such a great question. I just think there's so many there's so many things you can do. I love that you brought up perspective because I'm really big on changing perspective and being in control of changing your perspective. If you're in a situation where, oh, I have this job that I love, but I'm still not feeling passionate about, I would say find a hobby that will allow you to explore that passion and make time for it at some, like, I don't know, after work or, in the mornings or whatever. But I would say that start off by seeing how it goes as a hobby and try
Yeah.
different things. Because if you're just like not satisfied, not 100% satisfied with your job, but you're like, oh yeah, this is fine. Like, I'm making money, I feel good, whatever. But you're not feeling that like fire to, like it's really making me feel fulfilled doing what I'm doing. I would say first, like, think about your job, like, think about how your job actually fulfills you. And if you're really struggling to find an answer, then maybe think about a hobby that might fulfill you.
Mhm.
And if not, like if you really don't have the time, I would say find a new perspective that really helps you shift your views on what you're doing so that you
Mhm.
can adapt and feel more fulfilled in what you're doing.
Yeah.
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 That's we don't even give ourselves permission to explore, like, what if I just did this for 15 minutes a day? Or what if
Yeah.
I just took like a Saturday and I played around with whatever the hobby is? I was just reading a paper, a news article, and it was talking about the software engineer in Texas who lives in Dallas, and they basically they threw clay on the side for a hobby as a way to relieve their stress. And something happened to where one of his pieces wound up catching the eye of a local restaurant owner, and the restaurant owner was like, can you make like all of our servingware and our dishes and things that our patrons dine off of? And just like one thing after another, one restaurant gets it, then another restaurant's like, oh, I want something similar. And so now his full-time job is creating fine dining ware for upscale restaurants
That's
in
amazing.
Texas and outside of Texas as well. But it just started with, oh, this is what I do on the weekend, right?
Yeah.
That's amazing. Sometimes when you're meant to be doing something, things unravel and more opportunities come to you. And then you really just kind of fall into something and you keep doing it. But that's such an incredible story because this guy was just relieving his stress, but that led to his profession now, which is so
Mm.
incredible. But I liked what you said that I, I don't know if you brought this up at this point, but about spending even like 15 minutes on doing something creative. I
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
think there's just so much value in creativity and what that could do to your life and in making you feel happier and giving you the space to really connect with yourself and connect with memories or connect with your life and relaxing your brain as well, especially if you're in a job that's like really intense, doing things like creativity or even going to the gym and those things just really relieve you and it's so necessary to implement that into your lifestyle to
Yeah.
remain balanced.
Yeah. I also think that we are more predisposed to discouraging ourselves than encouraging ourselves, right? And what I mean by that is, someone might have an idea of trying something, and before even trying it or thinking about it, they'll say, "Well, I wouldn't be good at that anyways," right? So I've never made abstract art. I've never in all the days I've been alive. But I just sitting here right now, I'm thinking, would I go try that? And the answer that's coming up for me is sort of instinctively is like, no, you would never be able to create that. And so I have to stop and ask myself, well, how do you know that you're not good at this? Right? And by whose definition am I not good? And then I sort of went through this mental gymnastics while you're thinking. I was like, well, let's say I made a piece and someone came along and said, this is amazing. I'll give you $1 million. And they buy it. And really, it was just so ugly that no one on the planet should have it. It was just that ugly. I would walk away thinking like, man, I'm a good artist. Like, how lucky am I to figure out that I'm so good? Good thing I tried. Holy shit, right? But the first instinct for all of us is to just say, I wouldn't be good at that, or it wouldn't be worth my time, right? How many times have
Yeah.
we said that?
Oh my gosh. So I also worked at a high school for 2 years, and it just reminded me of I taught so many students, and a lot of them had that mindset like, oh, I can't do that, like it's too complicated, or I'm not good at art, or I can't do art. And that whole mindset, it's really common, but I firstly believe that anyone can learn how to produce art. It's a skill, it's like a muscle. And it's like learning a new sport, right? First, it's really just like learning the tactics
Yeah,
and maybe the motion. And then second, you learn the philosophy and theories. And then that advances your art to like understanding, okay, like these colors work together. The more that you do, like how things play and work with each other. And then maybe it's technique, then it's like looking at the technique. But at the base level, you can produce like anyone can
yeah,
produce like a piece of art, right? But
yeah,
it's funny because like that mindset, I think some people, most people find art really intimidating because it's just like, oh, you see these like amazing like technical like pieces, and you're just like, wow, like how did they go
yeah,
from there to there, right? But I think
yeah,
with anything, like if you spend like 10 minutes a day drawing
yeah,
a flower for an entire year, by the end of the year, you're gonna be a pro at just drawing a flower.
yeah. I
And
agree.
it's and then you're like an artist.
Yeah,
But
I
everyone
Flower
is an artist
artist.
before you even start. So
Yeah, well, my 4-year-old daughter is an artist, right? She finger
yeah.
paints, and I look at that art, and I think it's the best thing on the planet, right? But it's an interesting thing, an interesting phenomenon that you mentioned, and I just want to tease it out a little bit. Uh, what I was doing when I was describing was comparing my current ability to your ability.
Hmm.
And if we do that, we're always going to fall short or criticize or discourage ourselves when
Mm.
we're comparing it to a professional or what we think is a standard.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Rather, what I've been advising a lot of people, and it sounds sort of arrogant to say, but I think if you bear with it and you think about it, you'll never be as good as me at something I've been doing for 25 years. But that
Yeah.
isn't the metric. The metric is, can you be better than who you are today or how you are today? So if you use that metric, then even you can be a better artist, right? In
Yeah.
10, 15 years, you'll be a better artist. And if I started today, I may never catch up to you. Seema may never catch up to
Mhm.
you, but we'll be better than we are today,
Yeah,
right?
and I think that's such an interesting thing that you mentioned. It's all about measuring what you're doing against yourself versus all the noise that is out there.
Mhm.
I feel
Yeah.
like there's just too much stimulus that we tend to always be measuring ourselves to people and people's lives and journeys that are just completely different.
Mhm.
And that's an unfair metric.
Yeah, I think it's easy for achievers, for people who are goal oriented to compare because that's how we're taught, right? Like you compare grades, you compete for spots in graduate school or rankings or job. Like it's all about where are you as compared to other people, when in reality it's really not about that. So I love that you both mentioned the importance of refocusing inward
Yeah.
and making that the more accurate metric actually for what you're wanting to do. So, Dinesh, you mentioned the reasons people kind of discount themselves, right? And they're like, well, I don't have time, or I'm not going to be good enough. I don't, blah, blah, blah. The other thing I think people start to tell themselves is, why would that even benefit me? Why would I
Mm.
even bother? Because
Yeah.
what good that would that do?
Mm.
Right?
Yeah.
Karriena, can you speak to that a little bit, especially when it comes to something like art? Because so many of our listeners, they're not quote unquote artists, right? They're not in necessarily what I would categorize as a creative field.
Yeah.
Um, and many of us inherently are not risk takers to say, I'm going to go try that new thing, right?
Yeah.
We tell ourselves, it's not really going to benefit me. So speak to
Mhm.
that a little bit.
Yeah, no, I love this question. And I am such a pro believer that creativity can enhance your fulfillment and happiness in life. I think that anything that we do that we can give ourselves gives us a little bit of happiness, you know? And when we create or when we're working on a project, you can feel a sense of achievement when you finish something, you know, or when you learned a new skill and you practice it over a long period of time and you finally feel like, oh my gosh, like I started over here and now like I can draw this beautiful flower and in so much detail, you can see like a progress and there's a sense of fulfillment and even just a small scale. But what creativity really does to our brain is that it gives you the same feeling as going to the gym. Like it makes you feel really good. It releases your stress. And especially if you're in a job that requires you to be turned on all the time and you're stressed, you know, we need balance in our life. And creativity gives us that balance to help us live and bring back that equilibrium to move forward a bit more happier and seamless. But it reduces stress. It helps you think clearer. It gives you better perspectives, or it helps you make new connections. And it really just allows your brain to foster and move forward.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because there's so many people that say, well, I'm just not a creative person. And I think
Yeah.
that's quite frankly hilarious because that's like saying I never feel any emotion, right? As a human, creativity is it's an essential aspect of our being.
Mm,
Very few, I feel like, creatures are inherently creative in a way that's meant for us to not, we're not doing this to survive, right?
Right.
mm.
You're not looking at sharks out there creating sandcastles because it makes them feel better. It's really a human thing to be creative.
Yeah.
So I always find it so funny when people are of the mindset that they aren't creative.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I love that you mentioned that because I think about a lot of people as well who might think of themselves as not creative, but they find themselves getting really creative in the kitchen, or they find themselves like doing really creative things with their house, or doing like random like creative projects, or maybe journaling. Journaling is another form of being creative,
Yeah.
or maybe taking beautiful photos. You know, create being creative is also like a mindset, right? And then producing art, producing creative work is something anyone can do, but you start off somewhere and you need technical, as like you need practice to be able to make it better. But I think everyone has a creative mindset and everyone needs a creative outlet because
Yeah.
I think that it's so important to live a happier life.
Yeah, I think that's true, but to me, not that I disagree with anything, but to me, the bigger problem is the fixed identity, right?
Mhm.
If you would have come to me a couple of years ago and said, do you think of yourself as an author, as a
Mm,
social media video creator, or any of that, or a podcaster? I'm like, no, that's not who I am. And then you slowly by slowly compound and you look back and wait a second, when did I wake up and become that?
Yeah.
So I think that, if you're saying things like that, the bigger problem might be that may affect you later on is that you've got a fixed identity and you don't think your identity can change when, your identity can change in a flash, right? You can go from being
mm,
not a parent to a parent in a matter of seconds, right?
yeah.
Or something else, or even when someone confers a degree to you, you go from not being a dentist to being a dentist, right?
Oh yeah.
And it can happen very quickly. But I have a question for you specifically, Karina. So, do you follow golf at all?
Golf.
Yeah,
Not
somewhat. You know who Vijay
really.
Singh is?
No.
He's been a long time golfer from the Caribbean, and he's pretty experienced. I shouldn't say he is old, but he's been playing for a long time. And after one of the tournaments he won, someone stuck a mic in his face and said, "Are you planning to retire soon?" Right? And he said, "And do what? Like most people like you retire and come play golf. What am I going to retire and do? Right?" So that reminded me of a question that I have for you. If for me creativity is drawing or writing in a journal or making a podcast or planting or something, what does an artist do for her creativity? Because you just finished telling us that it's important for all of us to have some creative outlet, right?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, as a creative person, I cannot do the same thing all the time. Like I can, but I also need to constantly be playing with different types of creativity. So I actually started off my first collection as a pen drawing line of artwork. So I have these really intricate pen drawings, and from there I
Ooh.
moved into abstract art. But as like you're always just like experimenting with like a new technique or a new material and maybe combining different things together. And so I guess like as to stimulate my creative brain, I need to like constantly be trying out new things
Mm.
and also be able to take breaks away from being creative to be more creative.
Yeah.
So I go to the gym like 4 times a week because that really helps with like also my creativity. And now that I have a baby, I feel like we're always at a park, and I didn't realize how actually that benefits us so much.
Hmm.
Like going for walks and all of that just like also adds to stimulating my creativity. But yeah, I guess to
Yeah.
answer your question, it's just really trying new things that make me feel excited about being creative.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. I think we all, whether we try creative things or not, we should always be trying new things.
Yes, 100%.
If too much time goes by and we haven't tried something, I think it's always a good idea to try something.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
before, I mean, this has been such a great conversation, and I think we have hundreds of questions for you. But before we wrap up, I have one more question for you, if you're
Yeah,
up for it.
of course.
Um, in your artistic journey, from going from hobby painter or dabbler to the pause to the jewelry making, all that, does anyone looked at a painting and said, "This is so ugly. I don't know why you would do that," in a nicer way or whatever? What has been your biggest
Oh
rejection
yeah.
that you've had to suffer or endure? I should say suffer because you came back and you're thriving, but you've had
Yeah.
to endure. And what would you say to someone who is going through rejection in another part of their life, for example? And
Yeah.
what can they learn from your path?
That's a great question. And I mean, as an artist, you're constantly putting yourself and your work out there. So I think from my college experience, being at Parsons, you're so used to some level of criticism because
Mm.
you're churning out full projects every 4 weeks and you're getting full critiques back at you. So people are full on being like, "Oh, I don't like this. This could be changed, but I like this part of your work." So you're constantly getting that. You kind of become immune to that kind of feedback.
Yeah.
But when I moved to the States, I remember I did I did an art show sort of at an it was like a staging for a house, and I combined it with an art show and invited people to come and see my work. But there was one really old lady there who just loved like collecting just really dark artworks and just have that like that gory meaning to it. And she came in and she's like, "Oh, this stuff is just not art. It's so decorative." And I was like, it was like it was, I think in the first year I was here, and I was like, I mean, for a day or two, I was like, well, that's just that's
Yeah.
interesting. Like she claimed to be like a very like art um connoisseur as well, so I was like, oh, okay. That kind of hurt a little bit, but at the same time,
Yeah.
I realized that she had a very specific taste and she had her own point of view on what art meant to her. And I was surrounded by so many artists that were doing what I was doing or doing other things similar to what I was doing. And I was
Mhm.
like, there's so much out there that like one person's opinion shouldn't really defer you from continuing to do what you're doing.
Yeah.
Or yeah,
Well,
Yeah.
that leads to a really interesting point, right? We all know beauty is in the eye of the beholder, right? And the art, the appreciation of your art is so subjective, right? I
Yeah.
mean, as you see. So at the end of the day, do you create art for yourself or do you create art for other people? And how should we be living our lives from an artist perspective? Like, let's say we're all creating our pieces of art. And if
Hmm.
we know that different people have different tastes and different people have different perspectives, should we be creating for ourselves or should we be creating for what the world wants?
Well, I personally create art for myself, and my process continues to allow me to really slow down and really think about my life and my memories. But my art not should, but like I want my art to speak to someone else differently. I want them to be able to see my art and connect it to their own thoughts and memories or emotions. You know, it's not what I'm telling them I think it should be, it's what they think it means to them. But
Mhm.
Yeah.
if I'm drawing upon like memories and emotions and painting from that perspective, I just aim for my viewer to connect it to their personal memories and experiences and be
Mm.
able to have that time to really slow down and embrace certain moments. And
Mhm.
I just think that we all need to create that time to really focus on just taking a pause to be
Mhm.
able to think about your life and where you are right now, to be able
Mhm.
to acknowledge and move forward and feel a bit more grateful for where you are today.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So good. So
that
good.
is so good. Yeah, I mean, you talked about processing emotions. We all process emotions and events in our lives differently, and I love that when you know, going way back to the earlier part of the conversation, when you're processing everything, you're slowing down so that you can, in essence, speed up, and
Mhm.
that process is tactile for you when you do it through journaling or you do it through art or you do it through music where you're physically, you know, moving your fingers, and it becomes a part of what your body does. I would imagine, I know for me that was true when I was writing after coming out of, you know, I know Karina, when you and I connected earlier, we talked about the low points of motherhood, right? And how we experience
Yes.
depression sometimes as moms. And so for me, that was writing and having that cathartic release. So I love that you talked about um, how that was processed for you, and you just shared so much wisdom and so much
Mm.
gold. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
You're so wise, and I'm so glad you came on. And always a pleasure to host a fellow Cindy. But before we let you go, we have some wrap up questions at the end. So
Great.
if you have a couple more minutes, Seema and I will go back and forth, and we will ask you these questions. We live in a world where we like things right now, and we like them my way, and we want instant gratification. What's one thing that if someone's listening to this podcast and they're like, I really resonate with Karina, and she has one piece of advice for me that if I did, I know my life is going to change. It's going to be so much better, and it'll be totally worth it that I spent all this time listening to the Happy Human podcast just to get to this one episode. What would
Oh
you
yeah.
share? What's your one
Uh,
tip?
I would say spend 10 minutes a day trying a creative activity and implement that every day for a whole year and see how that changes at the end of the year.
Mm,
Wow, that's a good one. That is a good
so
one.
good. Yeah. Like even how you plate your food at dinner, right? You don't have to
Yeah,
necessarily do anything differently, but like maybe you're already putting food
yeah,
on your plate, like get creative with it.
yeah.
So
Whether it's
good.
that or taking a photo or
Yeah.
maybe making a collage or sketching
Yeah.
or, yeah.
So good. So listeners, for those of you who are joining us for the first time, thank you for joining us for the first time. Um, we have a tradition called Ask It Forward. So, how Ask It Forward works is the guest before Karina has left her a question without knowing, you know, who was going to come on the show, what we were going to talk about, even when we were going to record. And so they've left a question. We're going to ask it of Karina. Karina is then going to ask a question forward of the next guest. So, Karina, your question is from Dr. Deepak Kumar, who is like you, a fellow creative, but is actually a professor at USC in engineering.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, but makes time to be creative with his playwriting and production. At the time of this recording, actually, he shared with me he's getting married, and also his first this play that he's written is actually coming to life on stage. So a lot going on for Dr. Kumar. Congratulations to him. And his question to
Wow,
you,
incredible.
yeah, right? It's amazing.
Yeah, that's amazing.
His question to you is, what is something in this last week that has surprised you?
That's a really good question. It is more how the simple things in life just brings us so much happiness. I say this because I went to a park on Sunday and I brought my 1-year-old to a park. And prior to having a baby, I just did not think about going to a park or sitting and having a picnic and sitting on the grass and, go and get some sunshine. But just taking my 1-year-old to the park, sitting there, having some apples, the sun was like shining down on us. It was like green grass and he was crawling around. It was just surprising how resetting and peaceful and nice that was. You just feel so much more content and relaxed and ready for the week. And yeah, I think that surprised me.
Yes, it is always the simple things that take us by surprise, I think. So what is your question for the next guest?
My question is, if you were to do one creative practice or pick up one new creative hobby, what would it be?
That's a
love
good
that.
question. Seema, what would you say if you had to answer it?
I would say singing, maybe.
Singing. Wow.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
that would
good.
be fun. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
What
a
about you,
great
Dinesh?
one.
I would probably pick up pasta making. I just
Ah,
I just
Oh,
think making pasta is
that's cool.
is something that I'd like to do one day.
it's so
Oh,
fun. We actually spent last Friday. So Monsi and I, that's our thing. My 10-year-old, we make
oh,
pasta together. And it was like a 4-hour ordeal, but it was amazing. There's like no screens. We had Italian music going. We went and got basil from the garden. And, in the middle of that, she's like, hey,
oh,
let's make some cookies. So we made some cookies. And then my husband comes in and he's one of these ones that is not, he doesn't term himself as creative. And he's like, I think I'm going to make some ciabatta bread. So he makes the ciabatta, it's
wow.
it's a thing, right? Where one person
Yeah.
does it and you just expand. It's
I love
beautiful.
it.
So
Oh, I love
Okay.
that. That's such a great family thing to do.
yeah.
Cooking is one of the best things to do as a family because
Hmm.
it's such a routinely daily activity that you then make into such an experience with everyone
Mhm.
eating it. And I think that's just
Yeah.
such a beautiful thing.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't know about you, Karina, but what I heard was that Dinesh and Sanvi are going to get good at pasta making. And then we're going to, all go over to his house and we're going to eat the pasta. That's what I heard. So
I'm
Absolutely.
coming.
I need to first spend a year in Italy, then we'll have to negotiate that. But I agree. I think it's been, I started doing creative things later in life, and now it sort of has become a little bit of a game of what else can I do? What else did I think I couldn't do that I could do now, right?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, very quickly, the entire world opens up to you. And just in a few short years, you look back and your entire identity and you've grown so much, and so it's a lot of fun. So we don't have a really good way to thank you at the Happy Human podcast other than to say thank you. So what we came up with is to give our guests an opportunity to share an organization that they feel strongly about, and it would highlight that organization to all of our listeners. We would make a contribution on behalf of you as a way to say thank you in your name to the
That's really
organization,
nice.
and hopefully in some small way, even the people that don't listen to the podcast or know that we do this as our creative outlet can maybe benefit a little bit from our conversation. So with that, we want to give you a chance to share the organization that you'd like us to contribute to.
That's such a nice, really nice thing that you guys are doing. And I appreciate that a lot.
Thank you.
One organization that I feel really connected to is the CARE organization.
Hmm.
Their mission is dedicated to ending poverty and helping global crisis. And I just think that helping people who don't even have access to basic human needs like food, water, shelter is so important for us to help and give back.
I love
Yeah.
it.
I'm looking at their website right now and it's very, very critical work. And thank you for sharing it. So, Karriena, you mentioned before that you obviously you have art to sell that's available, but you also have art classes and things. So just tell the listeners, first of all,
Yeah.
where can they connect with you? Where can they, get more of your energy? And then if they were interested in filling a wall space or picking up a new hobby, how can you support that?
There's so many ways. I am on Instagram mostly. So I go by at Karriena_art. Um, and you'll just see what I'm up to, like new projects and get a glimpse into my life. And then on my website, I have my full collection. So I have available artworks that are currently available. I also have a whole line of prints that I've released. So I do prints of my original drawings that I first started with, and now they're all there as prints, as well as some of my abstract paintings, which are professionally turned into prints. And at the end of this year, I'm actually just about to start working on it. I'm going to be releasing a few different courses online, and one of them is to help with creating a creative hobby. So I am creating a course that allows you to explore a new creative hobby. Um, and it is it's basically for people who want to tap into painting or drawing and easy art projects that they can then do on a daily basis. And they're going to be short mini projects so that you can enjoy finishing and learning something new. And then I have some other courses that I'm going to be coming out this year for abstract painting, and that's for people that want to learn how to paint abstracts from beginners all the way to advanced.
It's
I
amazing.
love it. I love it. And do you have, I know we talked about this, but I'm going to make it sound like it's just totally spontaneous. Do you have something that you'd like to offer the Happy and Human podcast listeners for making it all the way through this episode?
Oh, yes. Well, if you have made it this far and listened to my story, I appreciate that. Thank you. We would like to extend a 10% discount code if you would like to either purchase an artwork from my website or if you'd like to join one of my courses. Um, so to do that, you could email me and just mentioned you listened to this episode, or we could put out a discount code, and we can dedicate it to Happy and Human. So the discount code would be Happy and Human 10. We can put that in the show notes.